The woman merely shook the dust from her rag, but the man mistook it for a wave. So he took off his hat and responded with excitement. His hearty laugh made the woman's heart skip a beat. She didn't feel like poking her head out until the man was gone. But being a maid in a rich man's house was a nightmare for love. But the next day she shook the rag again. And this time, the man still responded with the same enthusiasm. This warmed Anne's heart. On the third day, it was raining heavily and she thought the man wouldn't pass by. But then the man appeared. But there was no sign of him at the window. He left in despair. On the fourth day, Annie stood at the window for a long time, but she didn't see the smile. She thought she'd never see him again. But on the fifth day, the doorbell rang. Annie answered the door as she always did. It was the same man who knocked on the door. The man's name was Mark. Annie wanted to explain that it was a coincidence, but she hesitated. Then Mark invited Annie to a film tonight. But Annie had work to do and couldn't get off until 7. So they arranged to meet in front of the cinema at 8 o'clock. It was the first time she'd ever received flowers, and she was so happy. Soon they arrived at the venue. Mark took the initiative and bought 2 tickets, acting like a gentleman. But as the film began, he slowly put his hand on Annie's shoulder. I guess a lot of people's love begins with a film. Soon it was the 6th day. Annie asked Mark to go somewhere with her. She even fixed his tie for him. So she was taking him to meet her parents. And Mark wasn't shy. And so the day passed without a hitch. But what he didn't realize was that when Annie asked to go to Mark's house, she was refused. He refused because he was too poor, and the streets were dirty. Annie didn't take it personally and made a bold decision. The next day she resigned. She was going to marry Mark. The noblewoman had a disdain for love. But when she saw Anne and Mark in love, the word jealousy was written all over her face. Then they went to a new neighborhood. The house they had bought in installments over 30 years was their wedding home. But after seeing it, they realized it was worth it. The house is very spacious with huge floor-to-ceiling windows. In the bathroom, there was a bathtub and a toilet with a manual flush. But in Annie's mind, she had already planned a children's room, and there was a garden at the back of the house. The two of them hugged happily and looked forward to a better life. By the 8th day, they were ready to get married. For the rest of the day, Mark worked hard outside and kept the house in good order. They lived a quiet and sweet life. But one day, Annie suddenly broke down and cried. Mark rushed over to comfort her. It turned out that they hadn't been able to have a child in the 2 years they'd been married. Annie was already 37 years old. She was afraid that she would never be able to get pregnant again. So she was in great pain. So Mark bought the big mirror that his wife wanted to surprise her. But what he didn't expect was, Annie had a surprise for Mark too. It turned out that Annie was pregnant. Mark jumped up and down with joy at the sudden news. They hugged each other tightly. Soon it was Annie's birthday. Mark prepared a card and flowers for her. By this time, Annie was pregnant. A few months later, the baby was born. The two of them were discussing what to name the new baby. But the doctor interrupted them and asked Mark to step outside. The doctor said Mark's wife was 37 years old. It would be better not to have any more children. Annie would be in danger of having a baby at an advanced age. It took a moment for Mark to realize he was lucky to have a wife. After that, his husband would take care of the children. Annie washed the nappies and put them in the washing machine. And so, 3 years later, the baby had grown into a little boy. He was so cute with his naturally curly blonde hair. Next to them was a new